Before I would talk about the topic I brought you today, let me carry on with my quick intro. So, I have over 18 years of experience in software engineering. I started back in 1998, so I'm a kind of old dude. I'm one of those few who accidentally become a software tester. And it's really true because it started back in 1999, and I was young and all I wanted was to work abroad. I was looking for opportunities. And one day, my boss gave me an opportunity to become a test automation engineer in Helsinki, Finland. And I accepted the challenge, even though I knew almost nothing about testing and knew nothing about test automation. But fortunately, testing became my passion, and it's still my passion. At halfway through my career, I almost stopped doing testing. I wanted to move Greece, get out of this money-making cycle, you know. I wanted to harvest olives and orange. Sadly, I was told I'm not qualified for that job. So I stayed with software testing. I think it's a good decision. So honestly speaking, I'm still passionate about software testing, and that's the reason why I'm standing here in front of you today. That's all about me. The title of my presentation is Mastering the Test Process Improvement. Let's see what's on the agenda. First, I will talk a bit about pitfalls during initiation, so before you do any sort of improvement. Then we will talk about frameworks and models available currently. Then I will pick a certain one. You know, we have a limited time today, so we can't cover all of them. I pick one, and I'm going to demonstrate how to do test process improvement using that specific framework. And at the end, we will talk about change management consideration. So that's it for today. I've created this slide to demonstrate to you what are the major process improvement frameworks and models available today, and to demonstrate to you how they are connected and interrelated to each other. Of course, this diagram is incomplete, so there's a lot more, but those are the most important ones. Out of those, we have two so-called software process improvement frameworks. They're quite generic, and they cover requirement engineering, project management, etc. Sadly, they are quite inappropriate for test process improvement because they are not detailed enough, honestly. These are CMMI and SPICE, so we will skip them. So let's see what else we have. We have two on the top. Probably you recognize this PDCA. This is also called the Deming cycle. This is generic continuous improvement framework. Today we won't cover them in detail, but of course it's better to study them because they cover certain aspects of test process improvement which are not covered by those test process frameworks, namely preparation and the deployment phase. And we have IDEAL. I think this is slightly more detailed and probably better than PDCA. So I would recommend you to study this too, because they will help you to become a real professional improver, a change manager. Yeah. So let's see, our focus is going to be this part, diagnosing and establishing. And as I said, we are today have a slightly limited time, so we won't talk about analytical approach, and we will only talk about one of those test process improvement frameworks. And this is TPI Next. Yeah, so always start with, well, we are engineers and we are pretty good at problem solving, probably you know that. And often we are too enthusiastic about solving a problem, and we tend not to pay enough attention to preparations. Actually, I did dozens of such mistakes when I paid no or not enough attention to preparation. What do I mean? You should always start with having the buy-in of the management. Why? Because probably you will need their support. Probably you will need a budget, because you may need to buy some new licenses, hardware, tools, order some trainings. So someone has to cover those costs. And also, someone has to authorize you to implement any sort of change. So it's pretty important. Also, you shouldn't forget about having the people's buy-in, their support, because they should understand why you want to change something, because process improvement is purely changing something. And people have to understand the reason, and they have to, it's better to have them with you on the same boat, because if they don't want this change, probably they will resist. and probably they will mess up everything. So I would recommend you to pay enough attention to this preparation and initiation part. Today, we have no time to go more in detail. Let's see what else we have. Yeah. Usually when we start improving something, we should know where we are. This is to assess your current status. And as we said, today we will use models to do this assessment, and we have no time to cover those content models today, and we will not cover SPIs, the Software Process Improvement Frameworks, because they are quite inappropriate. So we will mainly, Yeah. So my first proposal, don't do it in isolation. Why? It's purely because you should know that you shouldn't and you can't do test process improvement in isolation. Rather, you should do it as part of a process improvement and generic improvement initiative. I would recommend you to do this. Why? Because maybe your issue is not within software testing, so you shouldn't try to fix it in software testing and try to cover those symptoms. You have to figure out what the real root cause is. Of course, you may not be an expert of requirement management, project management, but you shouldn't do, because it's a team effort. You should team up with people who has a different background and who knows those specific areas. Secondly, you should know that they are quite dependent. So sometimes you have cases when you need to change something in software testing and something in requirement management. So sometimes there are dependencies. And also sometimes test process improvement has certain preconditions, so you have to do something prior to do any test process improvement. So keep it in mind, there might